following a set format. Okay. Well, as you know, we are talking about the format and presentation as one of the important components of language curriculum design. So within this topic, we will see how we can set a format for language teaching, or for course, for a textbook, or for a lesson planning, or for material development. Well, before we start, you might be wondering how, since teaching, you might have noticed me talking about, this point from time to time, that language teaching is quite a dynamic process. I mean, because it involves certain variables. I mean, the administration, the situation, learners, and their learning styles. So it's impossible. I mean, it might be unrealistic to set a format and follow it in the later stages. Well, how it is possible? Well, I personally, I do believe that teaching is a dynamic process, and since it involves various variables, and we are not sure, I mean, the things prepared, how they're going to take place actually in the classroom. For example, if we have, prepared our objectives in a very organized way, and we going to teach our learners listening, so we're going to focus on meaning-focused input. So learners might be having their own styles about listening, and their styles could, intervene and might defeat the purposes of the lesson. So how is it possible? So the answer is, if we have a set format, that can help us to become a sort of, focused, disciplined in our approach to language teaching. That can help us, wasting our time or deviating from the use of target tasks. Okay, let's begin. What are the features of following a set format? Okay, well, while making decisions about setting up the format of a lesson, we need to take into account, first of all, the situational factors. As you know, like, the situational factors involve setting in itself, teacher factors, and the learner factors. So in this context, we need to ensure the length of time, the time taken by a teacher to complete a particular task or a lesson, right? And secondly, we need to take into account the teacher's factors. I mean, their proficiency level, or their training level, or their motivational level, right? And the typical size of the classroom, how a teacher, for example, can teach listening to a big classroom, right? When we are deciding about, a format, we need to take into account some pedagogical elements. By pedagogical elements, I mean the practical, which actually take place in the classroom. I mean, it could be the student-teacher relationship, or it could be the principles of language teaching. Just perhaps you could remember, we discussed in depth 20 principles proposed by Nation and McAllister, and these principles are about content and sequencing, format and presentation, monitoring and assessment. So we could we might adopt a principled approach towards language teaching. So, for example, while making decisions about the setting up a format of a lesson, we need to ensure that the order in which the lesson takes place. So the order will actually reflect our views about language learning, or the nature of language teaching, right? So principles of format, when we set up a format, that will help us clarify our goals in the classroom. And once learners and teachers are explicitly aware of the goals of or the objectives of a particular lesson, so that will help, make the lesson fruitful exercise for the learners. So, and while making decisions about the format, we need to ensure that we bring in activities which are engaging, which are motivating for the learners. So the motivation element is all the more important here, because if, for example, we've got the format of a lesson in a very organized and very well planned, but on the other hand, our learners are not motivated, so that could turn out to be sort of less useful for the learners. So motivation is important, engagement element is important. So it depends upon the individual teachers, what activities, what tasks, or what techniques they use to maintain the motivation and engagement level of the students.